97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
I love coaching this football team. I love coaching those players in there.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now and match your first deposit up to $250. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com. Win real money with their sports book along with casino games from the comfort of your home. Must be 21 or older to play. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Geoff Mosher is today's Football at 4, and we got a lot to get into as the Eagles get ready for the San Francisco 49ers. And, you know, I'm not a big must-win kind of guy. I mean, I know mathematically they would not be eliminated. The East is really bad. But if you fall to 0-3-1, I would imagine, Geoff, there is not a lot of things that we've seen this season that makes you feel confident that you would be able to turn something around at some point this year.
Right, Mike. You know, you go back to last year, and we were not confident, at least I wasn't, that they could turn it around in December because they had lost 3 games in a row, the last one being Miami. But if you took a step back, and you were pretty good at doing this, Mike, is saying, like, look, they're playing really bad teams, and they've played well during stretches last year, so there's an opportunity to get your season going here. All you have to do is beat a team that's much lousier than you, and obviously the Eagles were able to do that last year and playing the Giants twice and playing Washington, really only having to worry about Dallas. But this year, Mike, I mean, you look at the schedule and they're already struggling. Now they have to go across the country to play the defending NFC champions who are banged up but still have been able to survive with their injuries and play well.
Looks like they're getting Kittle back, by the way.
Yes. And then after that, you know, you've got Pittsburgh, a good team right now that's undefeated. And then after that, you got Baltimore. And so later in the season, you've got, Seattle, I think you have to play again.
You have a stretch of Green Bay, Seattle, New Orleans, and Arizona, and Dallas.
Yeah. So it's not that, you know, the Eagles couldn't win any of those games if they were playing better, right? It's more that if you lose again this week and you're 0-3-1, your margin of error week after week becomes so much smaller. The only thing that would keep you kind of perked as to the idea that they could still turn it around would be what you said, is that they're playing in the NFC East, and then also that there's one extra playoff spot per conference this year. But, you know, I know that a lot of people last year, Mike, we had this conversation. Yeah, you wanted the team to make the playoffs, but just losing in the first round wasn't going to make you that excited because of expectations. And I think the same with this year. I mean, you're trying to progress every year, not stay the same or regress. And certainly just backing into the playoffs this year because they added a spot and you won 8 or 9 games is not a progression from the year before or the year before that.
Yeah, and I want to get your take on, obviously you talk about progression and, you know, looking at this offense. What are you seeing in this offense from this year that might be different from, say, last year or the year before? I mean, Carson Wentz is still the trigger man. You got Miles Sanders. A lot of the lines very, you know, I know there's a lot of moving parts, but it's Peters, it was Sayamala, it's Kelsey, it's Lane Johnson. There's a lot of the same pieces here. So what's different?
First and foremost, Mike, turnovers, right? And so Carson Wentz has had 2 interceptions in each of the first 3 games. The Eagles aren't a team that creates a lot of takeaways, which is a separate issue with them.
0
We're
this
talking
year.
about offense right now, right? So they can't afford to give the ball up as much as they've been doing because they don't flip the field themselves. They don't negate that takeaway or turnover by a takeaway of their own. So that's really hurt them in a lot of critical stretches. If you look at their third down percentage, which I always think is really important, they're at 47%, which is 9th in the league, which surprised me. I thought they were going to be among the worst third down teams because they've been so defunct offensively throughout stretches of games. But that's actually not that bad. But they are 20th in the red zone. That's bad. Remember last year, despite all of their pitfalls on offense, they were the 4th best team on third down. They were the 3rd best team in the red zone. Well, now they're not. They're 20th in the red zone, and that's a big drop-off. If you go back to the Bengals game, Mike, there's a play in particular. Carson has, thrown the interception on his first drive. He comes back with a really nice second possession and leads the offense down into the red zone, inside the 20 of the Bengals. And there's a play where he has Desean Jackson wide open right around the 4-yard line there. And I've gone through it. I put it on InsideTheBirds.com in an all-22 review. He's even looking in Deshaun's direction. It looks like he's really looking for Goddard, who gets doubled. But Deshaun's there wide open, and he just does not throw the ball. And it's almost mind-boggling to see a guy have as much cushion as Desean has on that play, and not a lot of pressure. And and Carson, for whatever reason, doesn't throw the ball. I think that's where he took the sack, and on the next play, he took off and ran, and they had to settle for a field goal. Things like that I saw a lot of on tape. As far as what's different from last year to this year, there were about 4 or 5 plays in my story that's up on InsideTheBirds.com right now, where there's a wide open receiver, and Carson is looking in that direction and doesn't fire, or he just doesn't see the guy for whatever reason, because he's locked into his first read and he doesn't go through his progressions. I know he's been getting hit a lot. I know that there have been protection issues, and there were against the Bengals, but not on every opportunity where I see. But maybe it's just in the back of his head too much. Kind of like what we used to say about Eli Manning there at the end, where he just was either going to throw the ball to his first read or get out of dodge before he gets hit. I hope that that's not the case with Carson, where he's kind of like a scattershot quarterback.
When looking at this offense, it's obvious. Well, now the Dallas Goedert thing definitely plays a role, but the 12 personnel sets, they are just so heavy on it, and it makes sense when you have Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. But I just wonder if that is on top of having to utilize Greg Ward and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside not really being someone that you can rely on. Is that one of the reasons why maybe this offense isn't as explosive as we anticipated it to be?
Because they play a lot of 12 personnel?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, it's that when you play 12 personnel, even when you do have good tight ends like Goddard and like Ertz, you're just not as dynamic and not as much of a field stretching type team as you would ordinarily want to be, because tight ends in general are a little bit slower than wide receivers. That is a big reason why they went out and got Jalen Reagor and traded for Goodwin, right? And had Desean Jackson back. They felt that if they were going to play a lot of 12 personnel, at least they would have 2 guys on the outside that could stretch the field. Unlike last year when they were trying to do it with 12 personnel and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Greg Ward, and really nobody who could stretch the field. So that's why they wanted to get dynamic. But now there's no Jalen Reagor. You had Desean leave the game, not play as much as people expected in game 1, and then leave after a quarter in game 3. Then you had Goddard leave himself, so you're playing 12 personnel with now Zach Ertz and Richard Rodgers. So you're not even the dynamic 12 personnel that you wanted to be when you went into the year. So I think the injuries also play a part of that too.
So how do they move forward without Goddard at least the next couple of weeks? Do they stay with 12 personnel? Do they – I mean, the receiving situation's a bleep show as well. So do you stay – do you go 12 personnel with Richard Rodgers? Do you give this kid Butler and say, you know what, let's just find out what we have with this guy? He's a big physical guy or a big fast guy who's not even a tight end, but let's just try him. And they did it with Perkins last year. What do they do to make up for the fact that Goddard's not there?
Yeah, I think they're still going to be, because it's been their identity, and you don't just change it overnight, and you don't have, as you mentioned, great wide receivers. I don't think that they just automatically switch back to 3 wide, even without Goddard. You have Ertz. Richard Rodgers is a guy who's played a lot in the NFL, and I think when he plays for the Eagles, he does fairly well in the role that they give him. He can block a little bit in line as well, so that always helps, and that helps spring your run game a little bit. And they're going to have to kind of survive again with the receiving weapons that they have. We have to learn and see if Alshon Jeffrey can come and contribute. Obviously today, being Wednesday, is the first day the teams get out and practice. Got to see what he's been able to do, see what he can do tomorrow. Maybe if he can play, that helps you out. Again, it's not making you that much more speedy, but it's at least giving you a reliable pass catcher. But I think you're going to see a lot of that mix and match like you saw in the second half of the Bengals game, and even last year. Deontay Burnett's going to be out there a little bit. We'll see if J.J. Arcega-Whiteside gets out there a little bit. Greg Ward actually played a decent amount of snaps on the outside against the Bengals. He caught that touchdown that everybody saw as an outside receiver. He also had another play that I highlighted where he was wide open and could have had a touchdown, and Carson did not see him from the outside. So I think Doug's going to play mix and match with these wideouts and try to get the most out of them that he can. And, of course, if Desean can't play, then it's just going to be ugly. And I'm assuming he's not going to be able to play because usually with him, a hamstring is going to keep you out at least one game. So we're really talking about Arcega-Whiteside, Ward, Hightower, and Burnett. And of all those four, I'm not really sure how much Arcega-Whiteside is going to contribute.
That is definitely scary to hear. Now, with the run game, do you think that maybe there's something there that can help out the fact that there's so many lack of weapons? Were you okay with Miles Sanders last game, the usage of him? What about Boston Scott and Clement as well?
I thought Miles Sanders in the second quarter, Doug was trying to get a little quick game going with Carson, and he wound up on about 2 or 3 possessions trying to get like a screen on first down, just to get the ball out of Carson's hands and get that element of the game going. And neither of them worked. It would have been nice. It would have been a good idea, I thought, to run Miles Sanders there. I'm not big run pass ratio holler about it. I just find little individual moments in a game where I think, they passed there. They could have probably ran there, especially since Miles Sanders was averaging 8 yards per run in the first half. What really struck me in watching the tape is that if you watch the runs on the first series, they were really creative with their runs, meaning using misdirection, using guards and tackles pulling one way while the run went the opposite way. And that seems to be the addition that everybody was looking for with Rich Scangarello being here, that Kyle Shanahan type of way of having your misdirection fool the defense and get your guys open in space. And it did a really good job. Miles had 17 yards on his first run. He had 11 yards, I think, on his next one. He was doing a nice job. But as the game went on, I saw less of those kind of runs. There was a lot of motion, but there wasn't a whole lot of misdirection. And the most creativity I would see would be a trap, like a Jason Peters or a guard or a tackler, or Lane Johnson would kind of pull into the middle, right? And then that would be the lead block for the running back, which is what we've seen from Doug Peterson's offense routinely over the last 2 or 3 years. That's kind of what he does, quote unquote, creatively. So I don't know if maybe they took Scangarello's ideas and kind of wrote them into the first 15 plays and then just didn't have it for the rest of the game. But for whatever reason, they lacked that kind of creativity that I saw on the first 2 possessions. So I would hope against San Francisco, maybe they open that up and continue to try to do that a little bit more with the running game.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, Football at 4 here. So when you look over these plays, I know we're looking at the all-22, you get a much better look at who's open, what's Carson missing. Is Carson playing as bad as we all see on television? Is he missing guys? Is it mechanical, or is it more poor reads?
I mean, it's a little bit of everything. I will say after watching it, I noticed on plays that you didn't see, it was hard to see just watching in live action on TV. There were a couple of plays I'm like, I can't believe he made that play, then didn't make that play. Then I went and watched and I saw, well, he's got, Matt Pryor in his face because the tackle is pushing Matt Pryor back or Nate Herbig back, and Jason Peters really struggled a lot in that game. So I do have to say,
can I ask you about Peters real quick? Was it because obviously you're watching on TV, he gives up 3 sacks and they highlight that. Was it consistent, or was it just 3 plays that really stood out, or was he getting beat even though he wasn't giving up sacks?
I would say there were other pressures, and when you're a Pro Bowl left tackle, or when you're someone like Jason Peters, yeah, I know what you're saying, Mike. There's 60 snaps in a game, and if you only have 3 or 4 bad ones, it's not like people conveniently ignore the 57 other good ones, but. A tackle's job is really to keep the defense off the quarterback, and he doesn't move people the way he used to. There were some good run blocks that he had, but in general, you can't have your quarterback hit 3 or 4 times on the first 3 or 4 series without that seed getting planted in your quarterback's head that he's got to bail and get out. And then if he has a nice rep or 2 or 3 in a row, then it's somebody else that's not having, whether it's Herbig or Pryor or Kelsey. Lane was pretty good other than, I think, 1 or 2 snaps. But, it winds up being a collective effort. So I did see a lot of issues where Carson was trying to probably scan the field but had some guys pressed up against him, and it made it difficult. But I would say I thought his issues this game were less mechanics, like in the first 2, and more not seeing the field clearly.
I don't know which one's worse. Now that I'm thinking about it, but I want to touch on. Yeah, I want to touch on Jason Peters. If he continues to play the way that he played last game, let's say it's 2 weeks in a row, 3 weeks in a row of that type of play, could you see a scenario where maybe they go to Mailata? Could it be much worse than what we saw last week? I mean, I don't know. If he plays that way for, let's say, 3 weeks, there's no way you can continue to use him, right?
Oh, man, it's a very hypothetical question, right? I mean, we haven't seen a real 3-game lousy stretch from Jason Peters. We've seen some bad games, but it's never seemingly been so bad where it's 3 in a row where you even have to contemplate that decision. So I'm going to give the guy the benefit of the doubt a little bit. I also think, Hunter, a lot of times and we talk about this a lot, that offensive line play is pretty terrible around the league, and a lot of quarterbacks who don't have good left tackles, they just kind of get the coaches scheme around a little bit, and then the quarterbacks have that internal clock going on. And I think Carson probably will develop that a little bit. I would hope that Carson has to develop that internal clock a little bit better about getting rid of that ball quickly and not letting a liability there, or not letting a weakness at left tackle completely sabotage the entire offense.
There's so much, they got Rieger out. Now they put him on the injured reserve today. Goddard's out, so those guys are out minimum 3 weeks there. And obviously they're going to roll with – you just mentioned you don't know that Desean Jackson's going to play. It doesn't look like Alshon Jeffrey's going to play. If that's the case, who got the most snaps today in those spots? I mean, who plays the two – who are the 3 receivers, really? I mean, is Quez Watkins a possibility this week?
I have a hard time thinking Quez Watkins is going to get on this field and make a contribution, because he's been on IR for over 3 weeks now, and he has not practiced until today. So obviously they've got to ramp him up. I think even more so this year than in years past, Mike. They're cautious with guys who've missed a lot of time, because they didn't have the typical offseason conditioning anyway. So you don't want to get these guys hurt by rushing him back too soon. So I'd have a hard time thinking a guy who's a 6th-round pick and maybe in other years might not have even made the team is going to come in here and play 15 to 20 snaps. So I think you go in with Greg. You're going to play a lot of 12 personnel again, and you need 2 wide receivers mostly. One of them is going to be Greg Ward.
Is Butler? He has to be on the active roster, but he doesn't have to be on the game day roster, correct?
He does not have to be on the game. Right. They can make him inactive.
All right. But he has to be on the 53.
Yes, he's on the 53. He's on the team.
Is there a shot that he plays this weekend?
I would have to consider it a real long shot.
I would say, are they that desperate to get like some sort of speed on? I mean, the guy can run, I guess, right?
Yeah, but I think you're really, again, he's a tight end though. So I mean, you're going to play.
Well, he wasn't. They're making him one.
Right, they're making him a tight. He's a tight end for the Eagles. Somebody asked me the other day on Twitter, well, since when is he a tight end? And I wrote today. The day they signed him, they made him a tight end.
Yeah.
But so I don't think he has to learn that their version of the tight end offense and their West Coast offense. So I still think Rodgers and Goddard Rodgers and Ertz are your guys at tight end. Your question at wide receiver is, who are the receivers? It's going to be, to me, Greg Ward. It's going to be Arcega-Whiteside. It's going to be Deontay Burnett and John Hyde. Those 4 guys are your 4 guys, and it's really might just be 3, because I don't know how much JJ is going to see.
That's an ugly thought.
It is.
Real quick on defense, let's flip over there real fast, because Maddox got hurt. What's the situation now with Maddox? Is Trevor Williams taking over that spot? Are they going to try to use LeBlanc? Has Nicole Roby-Coleman, has that spot? It looked like, hey, he was the big spot in the offseason, that he had that nickel spot kind of locked down. Is that now in question? So the secondary mess.
This all sucks, doesn't it? I mean, just talking about like this feels like last
nothing
year.
Positive, Moshe. Nothing positive has yet to be talked about.
It's Groundhog Day with this team and these injuries. I mean, I feel bad for the Eagle fan who just wants to see his or her team compete like at somewhat close to full strength. I know Look, some teams have it worse. Denver has it worse. The Chargers have it worse. But this is like 3 years running now of like just constant, persistent injuries and musical chairs. So to answer your question, I imagine Trevor Williams is going to be the guy opposite Darius Slay, and Nicole Roby-Coleman is going to continue to man the slot. Maybe if things are terrible with Williams, if he's getting beat, maybe they have to adjust and put Strap out there just because he tends to play tough. But, no Craig Davis, no Avonte Maddox, and you're at the bottom of the barrel again.
Craig James.
I'm sorry, Craig James.
Don't disrespect the man. The Pony Express. Oh, wrong Craig James. Never mind.
Moshe, how have you felt about Jalen Mills to this point, playing in this new safety position?
Very mixed reaction. I don't think he's done anything particularly well. He's made a few good tackles coming down into the box, but he's also gotten beat. That touchdown, the first of 3 touchdowns to Tyler Higbee last week, I was told was on him because he's rushing the passer when he's supposed to be dropping into coverage. He's learning a new position. It's not going to be completely smooth, but as I said on the podcast that I think came out, the one that dropped this morning, Hunter and Mike, if the Eagles, and we're really getting ahead of ourselves here, but I'm going to do it anyway. If the Eagles don't use a high pick on a safety in the draft, this coming draft next April, 2021, they fire everybody. Just blow up the whole complex because it's an important position now. I know they don't value it, and I'm already saying not first round, but it's been 5-6 years since they actually tried to take a safety in the first 3 rounds, and then the one that it happened to be Jaquan Jarrett, right? So it didn't really work out for him that well. But they need a real modern playmaking safety. Kevon Wallace might wind up being a decent player. He's not making an impact now. He's a 4th-round pick. He might, but it's not like the Eagles have a stacked cupboard there. Rodney McLeod, this is probably his last year with the team. And Jalen Mills is an average player. No matter what he does, he's an average player. They need some playmaking safeties, and who knows when Will Parks will finally come back.
I don't know where the Eagles all of a sudden decided, look, Mills is a nice guy. Okay, you found a guy in the 7th round. They treat Mills like he was a 2nd-round pick.
They really do. I mean, they brought him back, although it was only a 1-year deal. I do think that Parks would have won this. I'm curious. I would have thought Parks would have been the starting safety. And obviously he can come back here and make a deal. But, we're talking about Will Parks. He's also a guy on a 1-year deal. It's the treatment of this position, much like linebacker.
Well,
we get it. We get you don't value it compared to pass rusher and corner. That doesn't mean you have to completely make it obsolete and worthless at the same time.
Well, the linebacker spot, before we roll here, I'm glad you brought this up because you looked at the All-22, and guys should check this out at InsideTheBirds.com. Jeff broke down a bunch of different plays where Carson's struggling, but I want to see how other teams are game planning and saying, where's 47? Because he stinks, and we can run everything right at him, and they're literally game planning for his ineptitude.
So it's all just a twisted, right? They obviously they think he's really smart, so smart that they cut L.J. Fort so that they want Nate Gary to be their guy. L.J. Fort winds up getting an extension with the Ravens. We know they cut L.J. Fort last year because it was going to help them in the comp pick formula, right? And because they cut L.J. Fort and got the comp pick they were looking for, they got that 3rd-round pick because Nick Foles left. Well, who'd they use the 3rd-round pick on? Desean Taylor. What's Desean Taylor doing? Nothing but running the scout team, which all goes back to linebacker and the decisions that they're making right now.
Unbelievable. All right, we'll keep an eye on the injury list because obviously that's going to be very interesting with Desean Jackson. Maybe you have any feeling that Alshon Jeffrey's going to play, or is that just a pipe dream?
I'd have to really see what he does this week in practice. And even if he can, I mean, I don't think it's fair to say he's just going to get out there and start and play all the snaps. A little bit would help, but you got a full game to play against a pretty good team here. So I can't expect Alshon to be playing, even 50% of the game.
All right, Football at 4, Geoff Mosher, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Make sure you check out Inside the Birds Sunday preview 2 hours before the Eagles game. And, of course, that's a great show with Trey Thomas and Greg Cosell and Adam Kaplan and Geoff Mosher. Kaplan's on tomorrow. Jeff's back on Friday as we get you ready for the Eagles and 49ers. You can only hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Geoff Mosher, take care, pal.
Always great, fellas.
Yeah, great breakdown and really good all-22 stuff over at InsideTheBirds.com. Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. They've also got a lot of other shows on the YouTube channel with Trey Thomas, Todd Harrimans, Jamal Jackson, Derek Gunn, and the whole crew of Inside the Birds. It's a great partnership. Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash.